Hi, this is Dana, and today I'm making a card using Art Impressions mini TryFold stamp set. This one is the Welcome Little one, and each of these stamp sets comes with full instructions on how to create your TryFold card. My card today is actually a little bit bigger than the instructions, and I just took a 12 by 12 piece of cardstock and I trimmed it down to 12 by 5 inches. And then I want to next score 4 inches from either side to create my card base. So I'm just going to pull out my score buddy and score at 4 inches, and then I can just flip it around and score it again at 4 inches. And I just crease my folds and I'll have my card base for my little mini TryFold stamp set. And I decided to create a boy card. So I'm going to use some kind of boyish pattern papers from Crate Paper called Little You, and I just picked out several different patterns that I liked. I wasn't sure which one exactly I would use, and then it was a matter of pulling off the stamps for each layer, and I also pulled out a circle die so I can make sure that I had a big enough die to cut for my watercolor paper. And I also choose the pattern paper for each flap. I went with the one for the outside flap, and then this particular one is for the inside flap. And I wanted just to make sure I liked how it looked on that flap. For the inside, I decided, of course, to use the little boy image, and I could just place him on the inside of the card. And this particular die was a little bit big, so I ended up pulling out a smaller die. And of course I had to choose which kind of paper I liked. I compared it to the inside flap just to make sure I didn't use the same one, and it went well together. So I decided which sentiment 2 that I liked, make sure that it would actually fit inside the circle. And once that was done, I put it back on my clear sheet just so I wouldn't lose it. And next, I just needed to adhere all my pattern papers to each of the different flaps. So I did the front, and then this one is the inside flap. And I just use double-sided tape to make sure that they all get adhered good. And even the inside of the card is going to get a little bit of pattern paper. And so I just take the release paper off and add my extra paper, trim it around the edges, and my card base is all ready. So I'm going to use these 2 dies from the Strathmore watercolor paper, and I just cut 2 of the big one and 1 of the small one. And then I'm going to use my MISTI to actually stamp the different images to make sure that they stamp correctly. And I just place them where I want them, close the door, and now I can ink them up with VersaFine ink since I'm going to do some watercoloring. And I'm just going to press the stamps onto the watercolor paper. And there was a couple areas that didn't quite get stamped very well, so I went back in with the ink and just inked up those particular areas and re-stamped them, which makes it so much easier to do with the MISTI, so that way you don't have to try to line stuff up. It's going to be perfect. So once that is done, I next have to do the watercoloring for each of the images. I used my distress markers, and I just pulled out certain ones that matched the pattern papers that I used. And I just went and did my watercoloring. You can fast forward if you don't want to watch me color. Otherwise, I'm going to start some music and you can watch me color using my distress markers. I'll also list the markers that I used in the description, so that way you'll know in case you can't quite read them on the video. Alright, I'll see you in a few minutes. Alright, so I'm back after coloring the images, and now I want to place the dies in the crib and in the inside of the crib. And so I just used some washi tape to actually hold the dies in there, and they match right up to the actual stamped images, so they're really easy to place. And I just run them through, and I punch out the holes that it cuts. Then I'm placing that circle with die on top of it over the top front of my card. So that way I can use my pen to kind of just trace around that die. So now I can remove the circle, put my die back on there, make a note of where it matches up, and then I can just use my washi tape, run it through my die cut machine, and then I have my holes punched out of not only my circle, but also the front of my card. And I just adhered that circle on top of my pattern paper on the front. So that's my front of my card. And I basically repeat the same thing for the inside flap. I just press down the front, use a pencil to kind of just lightly trace the outline of that baby's bed, and then I want to match up the hole in my second circle with the front of the card too, to make sure you can see it peek through the crib. And once I know for sure that's where I want, I just go over a little bit harder in that second layer to make sure I can now place my die right where I need it to be. It's kind of a little bit it's pretty easy just lining it all up, and I just run that again through my die cutting machine. And of course, remember to erase my pencil marks, and then now I can place adhesive on top or on the back of my circle for this inside flap. Now I'm just going to adhere it just like I did the front. Do some double-sided tape and a little bit of liquid adhesive, kind of make sure that it will actually stay, especially kind of around the edges and in around the middle part where you die cut it out. And I just line up the two windows that we die cut it out, and then I can press it down. So that's the inside flap. And then I want to do the very, very inside of the card, and that's where the little baby is going to go. See, you just want to be able to line the little baby up in that window that you've created. And I just use liquid adhesive, so that way I can place it on my card base and be able to still move it around before actually pressing it very hard. So I can just go back and forth until I know it's where I want it, and then I can just just press on it to make sure it actually stays in place. And now it's almost done, but you remember I had to die cut basically the crib, and I had left it white because I knew I needed to come back and actually kind of color it. So I just used a gray distress marker and some water, and I just went ahead and added some coloring and shading into my crib. I kept it pretty simple. It's pretty much white. I just used the gray to add some kind of shadowing and coloring to it. It didn't take me too long. You can obviously color it any color you want. You know, not all baby cribs are white. Some are dark. You know, it's up to you. And when I was done with the actual crib, I wanted to also create a ground for the crib, so I kind of added some more of that gray along the bottom here in a minute. And there's my little ground, so that way my crib isn't just floating off into space. And then there is my TryFold card. So I hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching.